Peeps, Kenny Molotov here, and today I wanted to talk to you about something that's really important to me, and I imagine to a bunch of people out there as well, and that is depression during plumbing. So peeps, here's a video that I've been thinking about doing for a little bit of time now, because I know that for myself, I do tend to go into stages of depression, and I've been doing that for many years. Ever since I sort of hit puberty in high school and the new hormones were kicking in, I came to realize that at some point, I was really depressed. I had anxiety going to school. It was debilitating to a point as well where, going to school was rough during those sections of times. And I know that as I progressed into my adulthood, the depression still was there, but it was way more functional and less debilitating. But it is something I want to talk to you all about because it's still something I deal with to this day. And I even deal with it on a day-to-day basis where I go to work and whatnot. And I just wanted to sort of talk about it generally to let you know what my experiences are with depression and how it sort of translates into the job site and how I function on the job site, and give you a few tips that have helped me in the past and solely myself. They might not work for you, but at least they might be a stepping stone to figure out whether or not they are useful to you or whether you need to find other things out there that might help you cope and function with them. So a couple of things I gotta lay out right now is that 2019 was a pretty rough year for me. 2020, the early stages of 2020 are still quite difficult. The big turmoils in my life are happening to this day, and we're still trying to figure them out, but it was a very testing year. And I also remember that the early stages of my apprenticeship were, I think, worse than this, to be honest. I think I was at an even lower place. My apprenticeship was pretty tough because of it, because there were so many changes. Me getting into the trade, by the way, was my feelings of depression eventually kicking me in the butt, saying, look, we gotta start our lives, I've always been trying to chase art throughout my entire life, and I'm still trying to chase art to this day, hence the YouTube channel, hence the music channel, hence the magic channel. I came to realize at some point that my art was just not keeping up with the other dreams that I had in my life, so I actually got into the trade because I eventually had to say to myself, look, art's fantastic, it allows me to have an outlet, but at the same time, there are people depending on me, and I'm sort of dropping the ball here. So getting into my apprenticeship was a really big change because my comedy career started going to a decline. I was still doing magic at the time, which was doing great, but it still wasn't enough. And then there were different social dynamics at work because now I'm working for my father. And something you have to know is that my father's been great to me for my entire life. It was the first time ever, though, that my father was now a boss and a manager. And that individual, compared to my father who I know from my house, they're two different people, two different dynamics. So trying to juggle that as well in the mix of trying to change my life was rough. But I wanted to talk to you all about this because, again, I think it's something humans deal with, whether it be plumbers or whether it be accountants. So I wanted to give you a few things that I do and I have done in the past that have helped me along the way. So the very first thing that I think you need to know is that you need to sort of sit down and assess how far along you are with the depression. The way depression works for me now as an adult is I find that I have some sort of turmoil, large turmoil occurs in my life, and then I have like a 7-day period. I am the most miserable. I'm at my worst. There's a lot of crying. There's a lot of talking to the people around me that are important to me that I can talk to about it. After that, it becomes a little bit more functional. I rarely get to the point where I totally can't function under the depression. I used to get like that when I was much younger, but there is a 7-day period where the lowest of the low is there. Now, here's what I noticed. It's not a debilitating type of depression that I'm currently dealing with. I deal with a very functional form of it. I'm high functioning during the day. So even though I'm miserable, I go to work. Even though I'm miserable, I do YouTube videos, etc. So that's just something you need to know about where my level of depression is. Here's the thing. If you find that it's happening for a couple of months, it's becoming worse and worse and worse, etc., I think you need to recognize in yourself that at some point it might be time for you to reach help and find help. And I say that for those people that are on the hardest side of the spectrum where it is really bad, you find yourself deteriorating even worse. And I say that for people that might be functioning but still need help. In other words, I'm trying to say finding help is really important, and I think at any stage of the spectrum of being really depressed and functioning pretty well, at any stage I think it's appropriate to find help because that has helped me in the past. So a couple of things you need to know about me. I've went to therapy twice in my life. My sister set me up with a social worker when I was very young, when I was probably in grade 10, and I did that for a while. I did that for about 8 months, I think. But that really helped me, and that helped me because the gentleman I was working with was able to break down where my mind wanders off to in the depression and how to sort of sit down and rationalize through it to figure out at least what's upsetting me today. That mechanism that he taught me was really useful throughout the rest of my life. And the second time I went to therapy was actually a sports psychologist I ended up finding. I had a really hard time with anxiety on the field. I played soccer pretty competitively. I was playing in the top level in Ontario, and I just came to realize that as soon as I would touch the pitch, the player that I was in practice was not the player that I was on the field. And that was really troubling for me because I would literally lock up. The decision making wouldn't actually be at play. So I ended up finding a sports therapist and starting to talk to her about it. That didn't help as much. But as I look back upon it now, I realize that it was useful. It did open my eyes to things that I could do to make it a little bit easier. Overall, I'm trying to tell you, I'm a big fan of the idea of therapy and the idea of social work. I think individuals in that line of work are there to try to help you out with ascertain what the issue is and also provide mechanisms to cope with it. And I think those are crucial because you'll be using those throughout your entire life, not just today, in this bad year or in this bad week or in this bad month. So if you find that you keep going through the same patterns and you're fed up with it, you know, what's helped me in the past is go see somebody about it. A couple of things I have to let you know is that sometimes it takes 2 or 3 different people to talk to find the right one. I have a lot of friends that are social workers, and that's also what they reiterate as well. Sometimes people go to a therapist and realize, man, I can't stand this individual. Therapy's not for me. Remember, therapists are kind of like friends. Sometimes you meet a therapist and like you guys click right away. Sometimes you meet a therapist and you're like, I don't feel like divulging my problems to this person. And that's totally normal. Finding someone sometimes takes a couple of tries, but that's something to keep in mind. If your depression is deteriorating, if you find that you're getting worse and worse over time, or if you just want mechanisms to cope, I suggest go and find somebody to talk to. And remember, a lot of times if you're working for plumbing companies and they're larger ones, they typically have some sort of benefits program that they provide to their workers as incentive. It might be time to make use of that. And also, if you already have your own individual insurance, that might cover a certain amount of money towards mental health during the year. So that might be something that might be useful to you if money is an issue for you at the moment. So a second way I normally deal with depression is talking about it. I do this quite a bit. I have an amazing support system that I'm blessed with, and I go to them for everything. And I try to talk to them and try to bounce ideas off of people. I try to dissect what's happening in my life to figure out how much of it is my fault and then how much of it is the fault of others. And I think that's crucial for your own well-being. You have to take responsibility for some things, obviously. You cannot put the onus entirely on other individuals, but at the same time, you need to figure out how much of it can you control, how much of it is in the control of others. That's what I typically do. And once I do that, and I do that for probably about a week's time to 2 weeks time to however long it's happening, and then I realize just for myself though that at some point, especially with issues that cannot be solved, talking about it too much might make me more depressed. So there is a balance going on there where you have to talk about it for sure to figure out the intricacies of the problem, but at the same time, for me at least, there is a version of overdoing it where it actually works against my mental health and it makes me even more tired, even more sad, even more depressed. So that's something to keep in mind, but definitely talk to people around you that are good at receiving information like that, are good at listening, and can provide decent advice or just listen when you need to be listened to. So those were a couple of general tips that I would normally provide anybody, but here's something that I noticed on the job site that I think would be useful for you and the sorts of things that I do around individuals when I'm at work. If I'm really in a bad place, if something really bad happened the day before and I'm particularly depressed that day, really blue that day, one thing I typically do on really bad days, and I'm talking about the sort of days where you're going to work and you sort of have tears waiting right behind your eyes. You know what I'm saying? Those sorts of days where you could be set off and you'll either blow up or you'll just break down crying. On those sorts of days, I make it a point point to keep to myself. And the reason why I do that on days like that is because I don't want to take out my anger on somebody that really doesn't deserve it, that just caught me in a really bad place. I don't want to do that to people, and that's why I try to stay away from people normally on days like that. And I also, a lot of times, I don't want to break down in front of people right in the middle of a job site. You know, there have been days like that where it's sort of like, man, I'm not going to talk as much today. I might not be as friendly as I normally am, just so that people understand, look, I need sort of some space. And I also find on days like that, if a bunch of people are going out to lunch and I'm around individuals that can't really catch the wavelength I'm on and realize that I'm like low energy that day, and they might be ragging on me and whatever, I tend to isolate myself on the worst of days, especially from functions like that, because some people just have a joking demeanor and a ragging on you demeanor all the time. And on the worst of days, it could drive me bananas. So that's something I typically do, but I don't think, again, isolating yourself overall is a good idea. I think being around the group and I think being social with people is super important during moments like that. But for me, not at my worst. You know what I'm saying? So if I'm upset for 2 or 3 days, I'll make it a point to make sure that I kind of step aside, try to recuperate and heal on my own. And then as soon as I'm feeling a little bit better, I can deal with a little bit more of a group dynamic, I then reintroduce that into my life. Because remember, you're sort of in survival mode, you know what I'm saying? And in survival mode, sometimes you need to just patch up, you know, and get your wounds healed, at least to a degree where you can walk around a bit, you know? So that's typically how I handle the worst of days. The fourth tip I want to give you is something I've already kind of touched upon, but you sort of have to keep your cool during these times because you're very amped up in moments like this. And sometimes depression manifests as like fury, and then sometimes depression manifests as broken down tears sort of thing. And I've had both sides of the spectrum. The way the energy pents up in me, sometimes I blast at somebody, and then sometimes I just need to cry. Again, I think going to the previous point, isolating yourself a bit in the worst moments is important. Keeping your cool is crucial because remember, some of the hardest moments about depression is when you meet people that don't realize something's going on and they're particularly happy, or they're playful in a way you can't match at that moment. I sort of sit back realizing that I'm getting angrier and angrier and angrier because somebody might be complaining about something absolutely minuscule in my life when something really terrible is happening to me at that moment. And I'm thinking to myself, you have no idea what you're talking about. This issue right here compared to mine are stupid. I don't know why we're even talking about this. But remember, you're coming from a lens of being wounded. Those individuals talking to you at that moment have the right to feel the way they feel, even though the issue might not be as severe as the issue you're dealing with or whatnot. And that's something really difficult to do because you're basically policing yourself. You're basically saying to yourself, look, this is your anger talking. You really shouldn't take it out on this individual. You shouldn't be frustrated with this individual. This person doesn't really know what you're going through at the time. And I'm sure if they did, they would take a different approach with you at the time. But you sort of have to keep your cool. And remember, not everybody is going through the same thing you're going through. And not everybody is sad when you're sad. You know what I'm saying? Some people are happy when you're sad. Some people had a fantastic 2019 when I might not have. And they have the right to be happy. And they should be happy. And that's what we should be wishing upon everybody. So sometimes it's really hard because in your misery, you're mad that other people are happy. And you're mad that their lives are functional. And it really takes an adult mind to basically say to yourself, dude, you being mad at them is not the right thing. You're mad about your life and how it's going. It's good on them that they're having a great time. They deserve to be having a great time. And your beef is not with them. You know what I'm saying? The fifth thing that I want to talk about, which is job specific, that I learned about plumbing specifically, is that especially in the hardest times, I find that whenever I get a call for work, I'm actually really happy. Especially if the turmoil I'm dealing with has nothing to do with work. Work provides a really good momentary escape from the bigger issues of life, which is a great blessing, I find. Sometimes distraction for me is crucial because I'm the type of person that mulls things over in his head forever. And that's the hardest part about not working. If I'm going through a really hard time and I'm at home at that time, I am thinking about it non-stop. And it's just going over and over in my head, and I keep working myself up. And what ends up happening is I finally get that call. Hey, we got a service call here. And in my head, I'm going, thank you. Thank you for giving me something and time to take away. And that's been a great blessing about plumbing. When you're doing plumbing work, in a lot of circumstances, you're so occupied with problem solving, the rest of your world gets wiped away for a moment. And that's how plumbing has manifested for me. Plumbing is really crucial to my mental health, I realized, and keeping occupied and busy, especially in a constructive way. So instead of becoming destructive and mulling it over in my head, I will do my best to edit a YouTube video, to go to work whenever there's a service call, to make music or whatever. It is time to occupy your mind with healthy things that aren't gonna drive you further down into the ground. And plumbing has been that for me. And another thing I noticed about plumbing is I am the most distracted when I'm sweating. So there are moments where I'm really upset and then I gotta go do a rough-in and I'll be hammering away, and then once I start sweating, I kind of wake up in my mind and I go, whoa, I actually haven't thought about that crappy issue that's been making me miserable for weeks, for a while. If you are ever on a job site and you find yourself still being in your head, maybe it's time to do something. I remember at the earliest stages of my apprenticeship, I wasn't doing much because I had to watch Dad hold the flashlight and do all those things. So I had a lot of time to think about things. During those moments, I would say to myself, okay, you know what? Let's kick our butt into gear. What does my journey person need? Okay, they're gonna need to clean these fittings. Let me go ahead and start that. Let me go clean the fittings for them. Oh, okay, so I'm done the fittings. What are they gonna need? They're gonna need to clean the pipe. Okay, let's clean the pipe. Oh, you know what? They need something from the truck. And then I became more proactive to distract that part of my mind so that I became more constructive on the job site as well. So if you're ever on a job site and you find yourself thinking about it, it means that you're not busy enough. Try to make yourself a little bit busier, a little bit more helpful. And the last source of advice I want to give you, peeps, is that what's always helped me in the past is having an outlet. Outlets can be sports. A lot of outlet for me is art. Like I'm telling you, I'm trying to bring out a 4-song EP. That has helped me greatly throughout depression. Same thing with doing YouTube. These sorts of things are actually really important to you because in your worst moment, in the moments where you feel the lowest, when you're creating something, when you're actively engaging something, not only does it distract you from the hardest parts of your life, but it also makes you feel proud about yourself. Whether it's this proud or this proud or this proud, makes you feel a sense of pride of like, you know what? Even in this really crappy moment, I was able to make this beautiful song or make this beautiful sweater, or I was able to make my friends laugh, you know? Hanging out with friends is a wonderful outlet. Or in a plumbing sense of things, I was able to rough in this fixture and I did a great job with my soldering, you know? So finding an outlet is crucial, at least for me. Peeps, I'm gonna do my best to leave a few sources down below. If you're dealing with something, go ahead and look down there, see if any of the sources might help you in taking a couple of steps towards seeking help with your mental health. You know, I don't know what you're going through, but depression runs in my family. It's something I've had. I can even remember moments of being really depressed before puberty. It's just something I think I'm going to be constantly dealing with throughout the rest of my life, and I think a lot of people are like that. I'm blessed that it's not debilitating to the point that it was in high school, but there were moments where it was really bad. And I just want to let you all know it's way more normal than a lot of people let on. I think you need to root for yourself, you know what I mean? And by rooting for yourself, I'm trying to say is you need to invest time in your mental health. I don't think it's something that comes naturally to everybody. Seeking help, there's no shame in that. That's why I told you right off the bat, I've seen therapists multiple times, and I have to be honest, the conversation about seeing a therapist has been happening in my head quite a bit, especially with everything that's going on. You need to spend more time with your mental health if that's something you're dealing with. Look, I know it's a little bit off topic. It's not specifically plumbing, but I think it's an important conversation. I wanted to let you all know where I stand on it, what has helped me in the past, and hopefully give you some ideas of functional ways of dealing with this sort of problem. Either way, peeps, appreciate your support. I hope you're doing well. Much love to all of you in the community, and I'll see you very soon. Candy Molotov, guys. Peace, baby. All right.
Over meadows, inside sprung grass, lungs breathing in the darkness. Love down low, scattered in the gravel.